Um, Hi, everybody. This is Mr. Max with the Finksburg Library Branch. People are going to be filtering in, and if you have any issues, feel free to join us here on Facebook as well. We are streaming live on there. This is the Plant This, Not That, a native plant alternatives for common invasive species in the garden. And I'm really excited to give this a talk. I'm an avid gardener and landscaper, and I have done a lot of my own research and independent study, and I'm really excited to share what I've noticed and kind of aggregated to help people create um, borders and all sorts of things that really help uh, the local environment. Um, all right, so feel free to keep yourself muted. Again, because we're on Facebook, feel free to keep your video off if you'd like. This is recorded and for posterity and on YouTube as well. So we're gonna, I believe we can get started now. And people will see as they come in. So let me go to share screen, go to there, and we're gonna go view. All right, so welcome. This is Plant This, Not That, Eastern US Native Alternatives for Common Garden Plants by myself, Max, again. I'm just a regular gardener. I'm an avid gardener. So a lot of this is just my observation and enthusiasm for making sure everything is healthy and nice in our ecosystem. So the first thing that I want to touch on is why native plants? Don't all shrubs, trees, and flowers, like all our regular, all our old-fashioned garden plants, don't they help wildlife? And the answer is both yes and no. Like, sure, a lot of flowering plants and bushes offer shelter and some food for our animals and wildlife. A lot of introduced garden plants don't really help them in the way they need. A lot of wildlife does not recognize them as useful compared to the species they evolved alongside here in North America. For example, a common garden landscape tree like ginkgo trees, while they make for excellent ornamental, they are basically living statuary with limited to no wildlife use. A lot of our introduced garden plants kind of serve this niche, or their nectar and other things like that tend to be low quality nutrition. It's not entirely the case for everything, but it's good to consider because in the US, there are 111 million acres of designated true wilderness left for wildlife. That's only a little over 5% of the total US landmass, most of which is in Alaska. It's just 2% of all land across the lower 48 states. And that's pretty small, like, even when you consider how big some of our parks appear. The rest is all developed as cities, farms, suburban, residential, and commercial spaces with forest and wild areas speckled in between. Of that developed 95%, the US in particular has about 4 million miles of asphalt roads, not including parking lots for the square area of parking lots. And that's actually from the BA government policy highway. There are 40 million acres of turf grass, so just your regular Kentucky bluegrass or other turf in the US, covering 1.9% of the land. Most of this was just wilderness or cultivated native space by Native Americans just 250 to 100 years ago or less. Even in the local areas, you only had a few houses, built until probably the 90s. By replacing remaining native spaces with cultivated non-native plants, we're further breaking up habitats and reducing availability of host plants. Non-native plants can become also invasive and escape into pockets of true wilderness, further displacing and destroying those remaining small pockets of native flora. Um, a few more facts. What's at stake? Um, Due to lack of native plants, invasive garden escapees, pesticides, and herbicides, our bird, butterfly, bat, and beneficial insect populations are crashing. Do you remember how your car grills used to be covered in bugs every summer? Have you taken a look and noticed how there's a lot less lately? Monarch butterflies have declined by 80% over a 20-year average since the 70s and 80s due to deforestation and a lack of milkweed, its host wildflower. This is both a twofer for um, not only the US, but also Mexico, because the forests where they roost in the winter are in Mexico and on the US border where they cut down trees for um, the border wall. Um, but at the same time, due to development, a lot of the native prairie and other wildflower meadows that have milkweed and or butterfly weed, where it lays caterpillars, is also shrinking immensely. Wild bee abundance shows declines in roughly 23% across the US from 2008 to 2013 and up to 90% depending on the species. So that's a very sharp decline in just a little bit of time. The number of birds in the United States and Canada have declined by 3 billion or 29% since 1970. And this is on top of 365 to 988 million birds dying from crashing into windows due to light pollution annually in just the US. This does not involve Canada. Um, and that's really sad statistics. I mean, most of the losses have been in the prairie states, but also eastern forest birds. 170 million eastern forest birds have lost since 1970, which is a negative 17% population loss in eastern songbirds. So 6 in 10 wood thrushes have been lost since 1970. Same thing with migratory birds. 2.5 billion migratory birds have been lost since 1970, and that means a 28% loss in migrational species. So 2 in 5 orioles, Baltimore orioles, our beloved oriole, have been lost since 1970. So, yikes, that's scary. Like, so what can we do to help? So there's a few things that we can do on a personal level that we can do. And the first is to stop broadly spraying insect foggers and insecticides, including systematic insecticides found in certain 3-in-1 plant and lawn fertilizers and fungicides. Always read labels and use alternative natural or controlled methods. This is not to say don't use all pesticides and herbicides. Very limited painted on application use for certain things can be very non-harmful. But a lot of this does stem to us spraying poisons and other things for our own comfort when outside. Do not plant possible host plants, such as milkweed, from plants treated with systemic insecticides. You need to ask every commercial nursery that you bought from, even Home Depot, Lowe's, if the growers that they utilize systemics on their plants, because what happens is the poison gets into the plant and then the caterpillars eat the plant and they will die. Keep fallen leaves and some sticks on the ground each fall if you can. Again, HOAs are a big part of this each fall, and keep chopped leaves in those loose piles to provide cover for critters and also help improve the soil. Reduce turf grass by connecting solo trees and shrubs in your yard into larger habitat beds. More on this later. Reduce light pollution and install bird-saving crash deterrents. We have a wonderful program out of Baltimore called Lights Out Baltimore. We've had them talk here at Finksburg Library. They have wonderful solutions and they work with you on how to prevent crashes at your home or indoor work site. Install birdhouses in proper locations. Petition for more natural spaces, preserves, and concrete removal for tree plantings along streets from local HOA and county governments. You know, we can do things personally, but things need to change on administrative levels. Invasive vines to look out for, Japanese honeysuckle, Chinese and Japanese wisteria, English ivy, porcelain berry, ornamental bittersweet, kudzu, and mile a minute. Invasive other plants, Japanese knotweed, Japanese silkgrass, garlic mustard, autumn olive, burning bush, and barberry. These are just some of the ones that you can notice these days in your wood lines and property lines. So take a stock of your property line and see if there's anything there that seems to be growing wildly, and get help properly identifying it. And finally, though, if you plant it, they will come. And yes, this is corn, but if you plant native plants, they will definitely help. So this is where we'll start getting into suggestions for gardens. So common garden plants that you might have at your house right now, and you see at the nurseries, garden stores a lot, are burning bush. They turn this brilliant red in the fall. Japanese barberry. They come in bright colors like purple here, but also lemon lime color, and sometimes like an amber color. And they're noticeable thorns all throughout, and also tend to have little red fruits in the autumn. We also have heavenly bamboo, which looks like a bamboo plant and tends to have these wonderful red berries. These are all, unfortunately, escaping into our forests, and they can be quite aggressive, especially burning bush. But even in natural preserves, barberry is starting to pop up in our woods. So I have a wonderful,
Amber.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you sharing a slideshow presentation?
Yes. There's nobody seeing this?
We can't see it.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
This whole time. I'm so sorry. Okay. Maybe I'll just start. Try again later. Okay, try this. Share. Can you see this? No. Okay, hold on. All right, hold on. I will show these statistics for you. I am so sorry. All right, let's try it again. Can you see this?
No.
No. Oh, I think this has happened before. Amber, you might need to bump me up to something. I'm so sorry. I've had this wonderful presentation. I thought I was showing it to everybody.
It said that you should be able to share.
Okay. All right, let's try it again. Can you see it?
No.
No.
Why don't, Max, why don't you send it to me and I will see if I can screen share it.
Sure. All right, and yeah, we'll do some catch up. We have plenty of time. I apologize, everybody. I am getting an error. There we go. It just sent it, Amber. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I've had some wonderful graphics that I was showing you, and also pictures that I've set up. Does anybody in the meantime have any questions? I can take maybe a few questions. Feel free to raise your hand. Pascal? You have to unmute.
No, you can't.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Do you know Doug Ptolemy?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's very helpful too with a lot of information in case.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, and Keith?
So the all the plants you've already mentioned are the bad plants, right?
Yes, yes. These are, the graphic shows it a lot better. We have some wonderful do nots and then
Okay.
do's. I am very sorry. I was waltzing around thinking that I was already showing it to everybody. But I will, Amber will be able to show it and I will be able to walk it through with you. We'll quickly go over a lot of the ones that we already went over. Fantastic. Yay. So now everybody can see everything that I actually did. This was that. Amber, could you scroll?
I'm not against it. I
just-
tried it. I made sure. Don't you
Yeah.
go this way?
Click down. So
Oh, come on, Mark.
this is where introduction with some of those initial stats that we went over. You can do the next. This was the graphic that I had talking about the birds and the loss of things. Just to it's really big. Can you cut it down? Okay, yes. Yes, Pascal, that's correct. If you have a big bush and stuff with herbicides, you can cut a stump and paint the stump with herbicides instead of broadly casting it all over. So this was our suggestions for controlled methods and different things that we can do now. And above all, we can plant native plants. So the next one, if you plant it, they will come. I thought some people would think that's funny. All right, so here's where we got juicy. So the three at the top are the burning bush, Japanese barberry, and heavenly bamboo. Those are our thugs. We do not want to be planting those in our gardens anymore. In very controlled situations, you might be able to plant like some of the newer barberries, but it's still not something that I would recommend. We do have wonderful 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 alternatives that are native derived that you can plant instead, and I will go through every one for us. So the first ones that we're going to be talking about, so all of these kind of mimic the same look and or niche that these three up here do. So we're going to talk about, if you look downwards, we have Virginia sweet spire. So the one with the white flowers. It's a wonderful native shrub. It's native to a tiny little pocket in Maryland, but it is a East Coast native. There are small dwarf varieties of this shrub. And as you can see right below that picture with the white flowers, they tends to turn a brilliant red and or garnet color in the fall. So you not only have wonderful bottle brush fragrant flowers during the spring, no thorns, and you get brilliant color in the evening or in the fall. Additionally, it also can handle quite a bit of part sun to slightly shady conditions as well as full sun. It also likes slopes, so because it has a loose, slightly colonial habit, but those are very good replacements for any of the three above, specifically burning bush. Next to that, with the blackberries, that is a aronia, and that's Aronia melanocarpa. Yes, all these will be able to, we will get this PDF out to everybody who attended today so that you can browse and take a look, especially since we weren't broadcasting it correctly at first. I'm so sorry. So yes, the autumn, the aronia is another native plant. The melanocarpa is more like it's called choke cherry, or a choke bush. These black berries are edible, but you have to use quite a bit of sugar to make like a jelly or a jam out of them in the fall. Again, they have white flowers in the spring for pollinators and develop these berries. And then they also have tend to have brilliant fall coloring ranging from red to yellows and gold. So they, again, put on a very wonderful show for season plant, because some of the berries will then cling to the plant throughout winter. After being blooded a little, birds will start to eat them more. Has a sister sibling, sister species that's right below it with the brilliant red color. That's called red chokeberry. It's a slightly taller, wispier plant. Very good for if you have a buffer zone, or if you just need something towards the back of something where you don't really need to see it for most of the year. But then it does turn this brilliant red. The foliage tends to turn brilliant red, and it also has little red berries that the birds tend to really like. They're both pretty high value plants. There are varieties available, Automagic Brilliantatissima, Lowscape Mound, and or Hedger. They're getting more and more common at garden centers, and they just make great hedges. We also have 9-bark here, which is that lime green plant. This is mainly a good replacement for barberry in the border, because from a distance, they look very much like barberry, except it has soft leaves, so no thorns, little spirea-like whitish flowers in the spring or early summer. And it does come in a range of colors from purple to these kind of lime colors. And they're breeding them to now have in-betweens of all sorts of wonderful amber colors, and ones that have interesting combos. Scientifically, there was a study done that the beneficial insects, or the insects that it has a relationship with in nature, tend to like the lime colored ones the same rate as the true species, versus the purple ones. So if you want to plant them, make sure to plant some of the lime colored leaves or a original one towards the back of the border, if you want to incorporate a purple one elsewhere in your yard, just so it evens it out. Below that, you see the brilliant, shiny scarlet foliage of what's called fragrant sumac. That's a very scary name for a lot of people, but and it is actually a cousin. It is a distant cousin for the poisonous ivy and sumac that we are so scared of. But it is completely harmless. And there is two new varieties, two cultivars of it, called Grolo, which is a ground cover, and Lacette, which has mini foliage that is very feathery looking. All the foliage does go in lobes of 3, so it is a little squirrely looking, but it has a wonderful fragrant foliage. If you have a male plant, it is split by gender. Somewhere in the vicinity, you will get sumac berries, which are edible and great in cooking, and again, great for wildlife. These are also great for slopes, and as you can see in the fall, it does turn a brilliant, brilliant red. So right under the heavenly bamboo, we also have Lakothaway, or dog hobble or fetter bush. It is a lovely relative of rhododendron, and if you're familiar with Andromeda or Pyrrhus, they have this wonderful green kind of candle flame shaped foliage. It's a semi-informal kind of shrub, semi-weeping, tends to be colonial. And then in the spring, has wonderful lily of the valley-like flowers, a lot like what you would call old-fashioned Andromeda. In the fall and winter, with a little bit of sun exposure, it tends to blush red and or deep, deep, deep purple, and we'll see an example of that later. So they're a wonderful alternative for heavenly bamboo with the type of foliage, but also additional flowers, and they make very good foundation plants, especially with part shade and moisture. Below that, we have viburnums, which are wonderful shrubs. That picture is of I believe, a nudum, which is one of the more common ones to find. You might find a variety called brandywine. They're very, very helpful plants. Birds love them. They are somewhat stressed right now due to an insect that is bothering them, but I still recommend them. There are two kind of tree-like shrub versions called nannyberry and called Lintago, and then there's also prunifolium. They have large edible fruit for humans, and they look very nice in the landscape, kind of like somewhat like a crepe myrtle. So these are all our first batch, and what to replace the burning bush, barberry, and bamboo. You could do the next one, Amber. All right, so a lot of people are going to be really sad, but unfortunately butterfly bush is an invasive species. I have seen the wild seedlings from regular bushes pop up in the woods and at other disturbed sites, and they're not pretty, and they take up space. I can get the name for that viburnum. I believe it might be a viburnum beetle. It's very plain. It's a very plain name. I will mention it later. I can pull that up for you. And to the right of that is also we have regular Japanese spirea, which is another very popular favorite garden plant. So I have recommendations here. So the one with all the butterflies is Agastaki. That is a native plant derived from a few species. There is a variety that is native to this area, but most of it is actually native to the West Coast. However, it is such a wonderful pollinator attractor that I do encourage its use, especially three varieties in particular: Blue Fortune, Dark Towers, and Purple Haze. So next to that, with the white flowers, is actually spirea. So this is a little confusing, but we do have two native spirea bushes called steeple bush. One is Spirea alba, which is white, and then we also have tomentosa, which is pink. They're slightly different in their application, but they both like kind of moist meadows and somewhat of the same position in the garden as a Japanese spirea. They tend to cluster, and they have these wonderful fluffy white and or pink flowers in late summer and early fall. Really lovely. So all the way to the right with the round flower is button bush. Button bush is a new hot plant on the scene. It's getting very popular. They are a very big shrub. It's a very, very big shrub, like 6 to 8 feet tall. And recently, they've introduced dwarf varieties perfect for the garden, so 3 to 5 feet tall. Sugar shack, yep. It's a great pollinator plant. Butterflies love it, and it deserves to be widely planted. It's very attractive. On the second row, we have Culliver's root. It's very similar to Agastaki, except it's an even bigger plant. It's a very, very tall, substantial looking plant, very architectural. If you like foxglove, hollyhock, and are fans of really tall, big cottage flowers, planting Culliver's root towards the back of your garden beds would be a fantastic choice. The straight species is preferred, but the variety Lavender Towers, actually in a study, gave better results from pollinators than the straight species did, which isn't always the case. A lot of cultivars sometimes do not attract the same amount of wildlife, just from breeding and other things. So next to that, we have a summer sweet, clethra, another wonderful shrub. It's a really sturdy, squat shrub that explodes into these little candle flame flowers, either in white or pink. There's various varieties and a lot of new varieties coming out as well. They flower in mid to late summer, very fragrant, often very described as very vanilla-like. Butterflies and lots of wildlife tend to really like it. It is late to wake up in the spring, so it makes in a border, it can help really give other plants room to shine. And then when those wane, it can wake up and leaf out. Next to that is a example of a cultivar of New Jersey tea, which is another native plant for the East Coast. New Jersey tea is best used inside fenced situations, only because deer do tend to like it. But it is a very pretty plant, and it definitely, with its fluffy flowers, it does tend to mimic spirea. Hi, Vince. We will be answering more and more questions towards the end. I do have a page of lots of links, and you will be getting this PDF as well, where you can take a look at the links and be able to contact these nurseries. I included this only because of the color. There is a hybrids that were made in France between our East Coast New Jersey tea, Cianthus, with the West Coast varieties, which are a little tender and called like California lilac. They've resulted in these wonderful baby blue plants that are hardy here, and if you can get them, they do very well. All right, so we can do the next slide. All right, so here we're getting more into like our evergreens. So I included certain boxwoods, privet, and autumn or Russian olive. And then I also included over here, not that it's necessarily bad, but I have other alternatives. All the way at the far right, we have laurel, or what people call laurel, cherry laurel, skip laurel. Alternatives include inkberry holly, or Ilex glabra. They look like boxwood, but it is a holly. They tend to have little red, little black berries if you have a male plant. There are varieties called shamrock, nigra, nana, and two new ones, gembox and strombox, that are more dwarf and round than the species, and they tend to stay compact. They make really good border plants and have that fine foliage. Ones like shamrock do get taller and eventually open up a little towards the bottom, but ones like gembox and strongbox are supposedly, they stay very compact and round, with relative foliage all the way to the ground, give or take, once comfortable. All the way to the right in this slide, we have another display of Leucothoe. These are showing off those lily of the valley flowers I was talking about. They flower all along the node. of their branches. They're very pretty, and a mature stand is very, very memorable and lightly fragrant. We have at the bottom, we have bayberry and wax myrtle. I've seen both used in the area and does very well. Wax myrtle can be a little tender depending if we have a really harsh winter or not, but you see it more towards the eastern shore. But I have seen both used in gardens, and it is a wonderful alternative. They are big plants, so you can use them in buffer zones or for screening, but there are some dwarf varieties available. They are just slightly harder to look for. If you inquire with certain nurseries, they might be able to get some for you eventually. Another example of Lakothaway in its winter foliage. It's really one of my favorite plants. It's why it's popped up, but it's another great example of something that could replace those cherry laurels and skip laurels, which tend to suddenly get disease and die, leaving gaps in your garden. Most of these plants all are either good for pollinators, you might have noticed, or have berries. It's very good to provide for season interest and or features for our wildlife. All right, so next, let's see what the next one looks like. All right, pollinator parade. Here's other alternatives for really good attracting pollinators and providing really good pollinator food. We have Soldago, any goldenrods. There are many different types of goldenrod native to Maryland, and some wonderful cultivars as well. In the end, at some of these nurseries, they will have the actual species listed out. There are actually a few that are rather dwarf and actually like some shade, woodland goldenrod. So they're pretty much a goldenrod for whatever you kind of need. We have Pinacanthum mountain mints, another native wildflower plant that pollinators absolutely go crazy for. If you have a corner that you can give to just mountain mint, I highly recommend it. They are just a pollinator powerhouse when it comes to attracting wildlife. We have lobelia, so we have cardinal flower that attracts both moths, hummingbird moths, and hummingbirds. It's great for our ruby throats. If you love your ruby throat hummingbirds, they're perfect for them late summer. The species black truffle attracts the pollinators just as well as the straight species. We also have Joe Pieweed over in the left-hand corner. It's had some weird name changes, but for the most part, the common name Joe Pieweed is what you want to look for. There's some really tall varieties and then very small ones as well. So perfect border plants that you can use. We also have asters. I particularly recommend aromatic aster. It's a very solid deer-proof, mostly critter-proof aster that has it's very shrubby, and it's actually the one in the picture here. Very shrubby, late fall, late summer, early fall flowers in beautiful blue. And they have two main cultivars out, October Skies and then Radon's Favorite, that slightly different colors each, but they are really good pollinator attractors. We also have Veronia, so that's New York ironweed. There's a few different varieties of ironweed, but then there's the main New York one, which is very tall and sculptural. It would make a great companion to the Culliver's root and other things like goldenrod. We also have Helianthus. There's the perennial sunflowers. There are a few native sunflowers to Maryland. They make great statement pieces towards the back of your borders or on your wood lines. and they explode into the very, very late, tend to be late summer. Some start earlier, late in mid to late, but most of them are late summer, and they provide a really big finale for your borders. We also have Monarda, fistulosa. In particular, Claire Grace variety was rated very highly for its use by pollinators, and also disease resistance. It's also known as like bergamot. Has that wonderful bergamot scent to the leaves, and you can use it in tea. We do have echinacea listed here, but you have to be very careful. A lot of those wonderful candy colored echinaceas that you're seeing on the market today are highly bred. And when they're highly bred like that, they're crossed with many different, some of the other species, and are so highly bred that pollinators tend to not use them, or they are so double or something that they don't have any nectar to give. So you have to be very careful, and this is no way to say don't buy those pretty ones if you really want it or you've seen it grow really well. But just make sure that you also buy a open pollinated cultivar, things like Ruby Star, Magnus, or the straight species, which can be very handsome on its own. And make sure to supplement alongside them. And that goes for a lot of these native plants, is that even if it's a cultivar and highly bred, it might not actually be helpful. So you always want to make sure in your garden ideas and planning to plant some variety and have a little bit of both, of the more natural cultivars and or seedlings versus the highly bred cultivars, showy ones. And finally, we have over here Liatris, which is gay feather, another wonderful plant. There's two varieties that you can find. One's a dwarf one, which is very small with little tiny pom-poms. And then there's the one that you see in the picture here, which send up the big candle flame in that kind of fuchsia magenta color. Again, butterflies really love them. All right, next one. All right, and this is in particular for butterflies. We also need a lot of our borders, because we're developing everything, we're losing our host plants. I always recommend, if you have space and are looking to redo your garden, first plant an oak. You should always plant an oak tree on your property, no matter where you are. We need our oaks, and unfortunately, because of how people are so transient, a lot of people are not planting oaks the way that they used to, and we are currently losing a lot of our older trees right now. And that ties into host plants for butterflies and other bugs and insects, but particularly butterflies, which are our favorites, of course. So ones that are great for butterflies is the tulip poplar. Again, popular tree, very quick growing, very big, has these wonderful pseudo magnolia flowers. We also want to recommend, of course, the native milkweeds, butterfly weed, swamp milkweed. Those are the plants for monarchs. And they are a truly magical plant, because as soon as you plant them, within a few weeks, you will either see a caterpillar or it will be suddenly gone, and which means a caterpillar was there. They are incredibly important to the monarch's survival, and if you can dedicate some space for these wonderful plants, but also give them space to know that they're probably going to get chewed up. They still look very beautiful, but just as I mentioned, you will have them one day and you go out and they will be absolutely gone. Or at least the leaves will be gone. The stalks will be there. But that's usually a very happy sign. So tuck them in among other slightly taller, like black-eyed Susans or other wonderful flowers, and just kind of let them be. The swamp milkweed tend to be very tall, and it's actually one of their preferred um, browsing and host plant. Similarly, we have Chelone glabra, turtle head. You might see a pink one available in the market. Ignore that one. We just want the white, because the Maryland checker spot butterfly loves turtle head, but we need to plant a lot of it in order to help sustain it. Has the wonderful white flowers in late summer. Then we also have pawpaw trees. If you're a fan of pawpaws or know what a pawpaw is, it's the largest North American fruit. Tends to be in the woods and up in the mountains. And the zebra swallowtail, the wonderful swallowtails with the more white coloring and bolder stripes, love and use the pawpaw as their host plant for their caterpillars. So if we want to see more zebras flying around, that's a perfect one to plant. We additionally have, for other swallowtails, we have spice bush over in the corner here. And also a golden Alexander, which is a parsley and carrot relative. They both are big pollinator attractants, and spice bush swallowtail and yellow swallowtails tend to use them as their host plant. Smaller butterflies and skippers love violas as well. Violas, the panicum, and sulfurs, little sulfur butterflies love cassia, which is a big architectural plant. I highly recommend that one as well. It looks very tropical. And it goes by two names, Marylandica or Hebe carpa. They're slightly different species, but if you find one of them, it doesn't really matter which one you get. You might notice in your lawn, you occasionally get pussy toes. If you let them flower, they are great attractors and also host plants for a lot of caterpillars. So if you can dig a few of them up and designate a space for your pussy toes, you will be rewarded with a lot more little friends flying around. All right, so next one. All right, so this one is maybe something that people were thinking about, but I mentioned earlier that US has a 1.9 coverage of turf grass. And that's kind of a problem because that means pesticides, herbicides, and that's just killing everything. That is probably one of the main contributors to things dying down, and it goes all throughout the food chain. The bugs are getting eaten by the birds, and then the birds, they don't tend to not do well. So a big concept for our gardens and for swapping out, so to speak, I want to introduce everyone to Carex, which is a perfect swap out for lawns. Particularly more so lawns that are not necessarily walked on. You can a little bit, but so I wanted to introduce this as well as a very important thing to consider when looking at swapping things out from your gardens. Areas lawn on your property that struggle or are not walked on or used, especially in between singular separate trees and shrubs, should be the first places to consider when taking steps to reduce lawn coverage. Encircle separate trees and shrubs or map out unused space with a hose, rope, or chalk and form new connecting garden beds. Formal ovals, circles, or rectangles in formal organic shapes. Just kind of let it design according to your area. Then you need to tear out and smother all the sod inside. New beds can then be planted with additional native shrubs, perennials, and native grasses, providing instant habitat and new garden borders. Or you do carex. If the appearance of lawn is important due to neighborhood HOA rules or personal preference, certain beds that are not used, like if you really don't walk on them, but it's in a place where you see it, it can probably be replaced with carex. There's a varied species, many species native to Maryland, and it's a grass-like perennial, also known as sedge. When used en masse, can simulate turfgrass and or liriabe. If you're familiar with liriabe, it often can mimic it perfectly. It can simulate turfgrass without the care and chemicals of lawn upkeep. Various species are considered semi-evergreen to evergreen and have many different textures, leaf shapes, and even colors. Some are very soft, like Pennsylvania, which is in the top image. That's Pennsylvania sedge, I believe. It's a very soft and flowing carex. Various carex can be blended together also in your plantings to create a modern grass border. And you can combine that with other woodland and or native things. Most carex only need to be sheared once a year. No more mowing the lawn. In spring, making them truly low care. All carex do bloom, providing food for pollinators, especially native butterflies, skippers, which can use the plant as hosts. Carex pennsylvanica, shown to the right, can host 36 species of caterpillars alone. And especially with carex, carex might be the plant that is the most easy to potentially petition HOAs and neighborhoods, Main Street improvement committees, and or your garden clubs to move towards utilizing more native plants in your plantings or use them in certain median. Shady does tend to like a little shade, but not all. It's a good crossover plant and a bridge between what people are used to and what they like in traditional plantings and what can be achieved through our native plantings and native uses. So consider petitioning your HOAs and other committees and things that you might even be involved in right now to consider replacing parts of your lawn or a median strip or anywhere that you don't walk necessarily, or with stepping stones. And carex would be a great choice and something that I highly encourage because it kind of gets the ball rolling. All right, so next slide, and this will be the last one. These are some resources that I particularly really like when doing my research. You may notice that there is the Missouri Botanical Garden Plant Finder, and then also the North Carolina Extension Gardener Plant Box. They do have other plants that are not hardy here in their collections and stuff, but they have such a comprehensive catalog encyclopedia of native plants and their cultivars that it is indispensable for me, and I highly recommend those sites as well. In the smaller print, we have local and semi-local nurseries and mail order that are perfect for getting in touch and learning, not only learning, but also where to purchase a lot of these shrubs and perennials. Isel Native Plants is semi-local in particular, but they aggregate a bunch of wholesaler accounts across the region and can send bulk orders of these plants to you at a relatively nice price versus having to go like through wholesale. So yeah, these are most of what I utilize every day in trying to decide what I want to do. Um, I hope that what we've talked about is helpful for you. I was really excited to talk about all this. If you have any questions, I feel like we could take some questions now, um, and I'd be happy to do so. Let's see in the chat.
I have a couple questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Your Augustakis, the three that you mentioned, the Blue Fortune, Dark Towers, and
Yes.
Purple Haze, are they the ones that you found that are the hardiest that tend to come back? Because
Yes.
the Kudos series and some of the other ones are really just, you know, are just not hardy here. I think it's too wet here in the wintertime for them.
Yeah, they tend to, because of their Southwest heritage, they tend to like it a little gravelly, or a little dry. If you can keep it a little gritty, they'll probably do just fine. But yes, those varieties tend to do a little better in this area. They like the humidity, because I think most of those have the pedigree of the East Coast native Agastaki.
Yeah, because the only one I've been able to bring back is the Purple Haze, but I usually lose like, 20% of them even. So
Yeah.
even Blue Boa, which is a really beautiful one, just isn't hardy.
Yeah, Blue Fortune tends to do pretty well.
Okay.
I like that one a lot.
Okay, thanks.
Let's see. Vince, you asked if most of these plants easily available. They are getting more and more available. They used to be very hard to find, a lot of these plants, a lot of the shrubs in particular. But a lot of the nurseries that I just mentioned, they've either shifted focus or are extremely generous in their native offerings, in addition to their regular garden plants. So a lot of times it's just getting better and better, for a lot of these native plants, especially as they're introducing the cultivars, which again, you have to research yourself and consider if that cultivar is going to be useful or not.
Which ones were the hardiest one that you just mentioned? Someone mentioned.
For the Agastaki, I think Blue Fortune is probably one of the best.
Okay.
It
Thank
has
you.
yellow leaves, doesn't it?
No, that's actually Golden Jubilee.
Oh, okay, Golden Jubilee. Okay.
That one also does okay.
Do you think Blue Fortune is pretty good in Golden Jubilee?
Yeah,
Thanks.
those are. Yep. Perennial Farm. Yep, Perennial Farm. Cavanos. Those are wonderful. If certain wholesalers in the area do tend to have retail hours these days, at least like Fridays or Saturdays. I would always call and check with some of your favorite wholesalers, or if you notice a wholesaler near you, check if they have retail. At least some part of the week, they might be willing to be like, yeah, sure, come on in. Because I know Shots Nursery up in Tannytown, wonderful resource, very friendly. They have retail hours I believe every Friday or Saturday. They have a lot of native plants. Let's see, offer free native plants. Oh yeah, sure. If anyone, Jim, if you'd like, you could share your, we'll get in touch, Jim. We'll make sure to get to you, and then we'll be able to forward that information. I don't want to share anybody's information right here.
Can I talk?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. This is Jim Clark, and no, I'm not asking people to share vocally their information. I'm providing a way. For probably over 25 years, and I live in Finksburg, Maryland.
Fantastic.
My wife and I have given Maryland native plants away for free. We literally have people take carloads away from our gardens. We give away all our extras. Our gardens are humongously big for that purpose. And if anybody wants to be on our mailing list that tells them what's available both spring and fall, all you need to do is send an email to me,
Okay.
which I'll give you my email address. It's Jim dot, or period, Clark, C-L-A-R-K, without an E on an end, just Jim.Clark,
Mm-hmm.
2009
Mm-hmm.
at Comcast.net. So it's Jim.Clark, 2009 at Comcast.net. And if you put in the subject, wants free native plants, I'll know it's not spam that way. And we will put you on a list. We don't bother people other than the notifications of when we have the plants available to give. And we help the master gardeners in both Carroll County and Howard County. We do the green schools for Baltimore County schools, a number of people who are just interested in helping nature. And so therefore, I'm telling you this so that you realize we're legit and are used for years now. If I could give you a couple more comments, I'd appreciate the opportunity.
Sure, absolutely.
I unfortunately was not able to join till 1:45 because I never received the link that I kept looking for. So I will watch
Okay,
the
I'm
whole.
so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. But I didn't get your background, so I'll look for that when there's a rebroadcast of this. But in case you didn't say it before, I would encourage people to look into any of the books from Doug Tellamy, because his books tell you which trees and which plants provide the most value for wildlife. His students at the University of Delaware have actually painstakingly hand-counted the number of caterpillars on certain types of native trees. And, it's eye-opening. He has a book out last 2 years, like Nature's Best Hope, something along that title. The third, a couple more things, if I may. You had mentioned Magnus for a purple coneflower cultivar. And I think you were mentioning that in a positive way.
Oh, is it a negative one?
Well, I had the good fortune about 10 years ago that Denise Gibbs, who is one of the authors of the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens book on butterfly gardening, she happens to live in Damascus, Maryland. She was pointing out to me that at a native plant sale, there were vendors selling Magnus. And at that time, it was the perennial of the year. And she said, Jim, she said, she actually did research on that plant, and there's no nectar in it.
Oh.
And yet you see the insects going to it because it looks like something they want. So you're really harming them because they're wasting the precious energy they do have inside themselves. So my wife and I only give out straight species Maryland native plants. And that's my only concern with today's talk, is that unless someone has spent the time and research to see if the flowers have the same amount or even any or the right quality of nectar, or the berries have the right degree of fat and sugar, you cannot trust it to take care of animals, pollinators, butterflies, bees, etc., unless someone's done the research. And there's been very little research because there's no money in it. The money is different cultivars and hybrids. So I just want to warn people, if they really care about animals of all types, then they want to really go with the straight species. And I appreciate you allowing me to speak for a moment on that topic.
Absolutely. I mean, I did mention that because of the breeding, it is hard to know, so that you want to do a balanced approach. Like, sure, get the ones that you like, the cultivar that you like, but make sure that you also get the actual straight species that will guaranteed support your wildlife as well. I do believe in moderation.
Yeah, well said, sir. And if you go to these various nurseries and you ask for the straight species, lots of times they have them, but they don't put them out because their customers are looking for some cultivar hybrids. So if you ask, lots of times you can find what you want, and you'll really make a difference. When I look out over my gardens, and it's just full of life
Mhm.
because I'm using all those straight species natives. So I hope to see some of the folks this spring and fall. Thank you very much for the offer.
Oh, you're
And
very
Max,
well.
you can use that email address to contact me. It'd be nice to have a follow-up, you and I.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, it's amazing because when it comes to this kind of stuff, community and organization is key. Communication, sharing the knowledge, sharing physical plants. It's really how we can get this this done. For those who might have missed earlier, yes, this program is being recorded. And we will have it both on Facebook and our YouTube. We accidentally, I thought I was showing the slideshow earlier in the slideshow. Then so we had to go kind of double back, but it will be available, and you can watch it whenever you'd like. And we will also, I will be also forwarding out the PDF of any of the attendees that I created so that you have it available for your own reference. Did we have any questions from Facebook? Did we know?
I have not seen anything yet. I'll keep looking.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any other questions or anything that they'd like to share? I love hearing input. I love hearing, like, again, I am an avid gardener fan. I am a children's librarian here at the Finksburg Branch. So it's always lovely to also learn and be able to collaborate with people. Fantastic. That's so great. Thank you, Pascal. It's okay, Vince. Believe it or not, as much as I'm really good at indoor plants, outdoor plants, I'm not good at indoor. I'm not good at indoor plants at all. So yeah, the whole issue with species is so muddled. And that's why, just because I like where you get the information, definitely just get pairs of your species. Get one that you know is going to be helpful, and then one that you like. And also, that also comes into effect with, well, Max, but what if I do want something that's introduced? What if I want a tea plant? What if I want a camellia? What if I want a rhododendron or something that's from China or something? And quite frankly, I'm of the camp, other people might disagree. Oh, I love perennial farm. Others might disagree. They have different opinions on it, but I think it's okay to incorporate non-natives into your plants as long as they're not going to be a danger to the your other plants. Yes, they do. The black swallowtail caterpillars love the carrot family. Yeah. Oh, see, we love a fox. So yeah, I would say you can always set a like percentage for yourself. Let's say you're looking at your garden right now, and it's like 80% non-native species, 30% native derived. Might want to switch it, like get to a point where you swap those percentages, or just going forward in your gardens, try to commit to everything that you add tends to be native or native derived. But maybe ever so often treat yourself to that variegated, camellia, that wonderful, hybrid rose. You shouldn't feel terribly bad about it. It often comes down to how you treat it. Are you spraying lots of chemicals? in order to take care of those things. Also, don't feel like you need to adhere to a strict purity, so to speak. Be gentle with yourself in process if you're trying to grasp all this stuff a little bit more and more. Anybody have any other questions, comments? Vince, a lot of these do not require pesticides because, quite frankly, for a lot of them, we want bugs on them or we want a few chewed leaves because that shows that they're being used. So yeah, most of them have no issues. Yep, Wakefield. Some of the perennials tend to have some like powdery mildew. Bergamot, the Monarda tends to have issues with that, but there's just by cutting it down ever so often or shearing it about a third, if it's getting a little rangy, you can help control that disease without having to spray.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, Irvine Nature Center is wonderful. They have the plant. Again, COVID has really put a wrench in a lot of these meetings and being able to help everybody. I actually encourage people to seek out on Facebook here, gardening with Native Maryland plants. It's a wonderful group on Facebook if you are not part of it. You have to join it. But it is a great resource of information and advice and conversation as well. I found it very lovely. Any other questions? Oh, we do have, okay, perfect. Zoom back up. All right, well, if nobody has any other questions, I think we can probably wrap it up right now. Oh, let me see. Oh yeah, the Chesapeake Bay Yardstick program run by the Master Gardeners is excellent. Yep, the Master Gardeners and the Maryland Extension is definitely one of the sources that I included at the back of this PDF. And they've been incredibly valuable. Which Facebook page? This will be on, I believe, all, correct, Amber? This will be on all CCPL library. It'll be on all of them.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, it'll be on all of our library websites. So again, thank you all so much. I really appreciate everybody coming and listening to me talk and talk and talk about plants. It's such a passion of mine, and I really wanted to introduce these kind of alternatives for everybody. So I hope you really enjoyed and look forward to the PDF being sent out for everybody, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.